My first question is, how on earth did you know this footage existed? And how did you find it, if you did? How did it start? The footage of the camp, of course.
Yeah. I when Nicole and I first started talking about the project, I mentioned that I remember this group of hippies with video cameras coming to the camp, and I remember they had given me the camera one day, but I didn't remember who they were. I thought maybe People was in the name of the group.
Yeah, and you can imagine how tantalizing that was, because Jim had said, Jim and I had worked together for 15 years. He was the sound mixer and sound designer on my previous documentaries, and we had a great rapport, and over time we started talking more and more about Jim's disability advocacy work and interest in kind of increasing representation of people with disabilities in film, and, eventually kind of thinking like, you said you've seen so many amazing films come through, but you weren't seeing progress around that. And so he pitched me a few ideas around disability, and at the end of a lunch we had, he said, I think I've always really wanted to make a film about my summer camp. And I said, why? And when he told me, I just almost fell on the floor, the idea of this sort of like crazy hippie Valhalla down the road from Woodstock and all of this. And then when he said that this, video crew had been there, I just wanted to hunt for it. And I would, kind of at night, just for months, kind of look online. And I was looking through digitized magazines, like radical video magazines. And finally at the back of one of them, I found a little ad, and it said, crabs outbreak at Camp Jened for the handicapped by the People's Video Theater. And so then I could look them up, and we found their names, and we found Howard Gutstadt, who was on the board of a kind of anarchist bookstore in San Francisco. So we left a note for him because they wouldn't give me his info.
Of course.
And a couple months later, he emailed us, and he was right across the bay, and he had 5.5 hours of the footage. And he was in the process of transferring it through a grant at the Bay Area Video Coalition. So it was all intact, and some of it had been transferred, but not all of it, and they hadn't seen it really since they had cut that little Crabs tape back in the day.
Well, I think every film, at least that's what I always feel about documentaries, needs luck. And if this film had any luck, which it had lots of, this was the most luck, to see the development and who you were when they were kids, and how they somehow found something that was bigger than who they were individually. I think that's what really is so moving about it. My second question, well, you've already answered one of them, which is how did you two start working together? But how long did this whole process take?
I kind of have to back time it, because what I do remember is that in August of 2016 we had our first shoot, which was with Judy Heumann in D.C. And so about a year before that, so we were on, so about the middle of 2015, and we just kind of finished.
2015.
Yeah, we kind of just finished a post like right around Christmas time.
Who gave you your first money?
Well, we had an angel, a friend of mine who was actually somebody who was rather important, kind of in. He created the concept of universal design, which in architecture is that you design things in such a way that it's good for everybody. It doesn't look like you had to make it wheelchair accessible or anything, but that it's part of the architecture. And so. And I didn't even know that when I first became friends with Ray, but Ray gave us some starting money, and then Catapult Film Fund in San Francisco.
And did anybody turn you down?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Is that Sarah?
That's Sarah Boulder, our incredible producer.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So there were people who did, but there usually are. I think it's very difficult to co-direct a film, just from my own experience. Can you tell me what your biggest arguments were about in this film?
Oh, you take it.
I mean,
Take it,
it's
sorry,
it's always tricky to co-direct a film, and it's especially tricky when your co-director is in the film. You know.
Very tricky, I would think.
Yeah, but I mean, I think
Was there a scene in particular that you really hashed through for 2 years?
I don't really think so. And we definitely had our moments where, we had to make some really tough choices about to cut things. But in the long run, this is the first time I'm directing a film. And Nicole's got well over 25 years worth of experience and films that I love and I think that are incredible. And I had freedom as a first-time director to we really had a really good collaboration. But I also really trust our editors and Nicole, and that if I couldn't come up with a really good argument for the way I felt, the smart thing was to say,
But even, I mean, a lot of times, everyone on the team had been in the cutting room doing this, for years, except you. But a lot of times we would say, no, this is the way we think it should be done. And Jim would keep coming back to something. And eventually we would find out that it was something really important, that there was something, that kind of referred pain thing, but there would be some really, powerful truth about usually the kind of lived experience of living with a disability that that we didn't understand, and we would kind of eventually figure out, oh, okay, that's what this is. We need to elevate that, but maybe it doesn't need to be elevated in this way or in this place, But that was
So that it became universally, so that it became comprehensive to everybody.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think you managed.
I mean, thank you. I mean, I think sometimes it just takes a long time to really kind of figure out the right words to say. Like sometimes in your gut you think there's something not right here, but if I can't articulate it, then, step back for a little while.
How did you get the Obamas interested in this?
We have a fantastic executive producer, Howard Gertler. And when he read about Higher Ground, their production company, he thought, wow, I wonder if this story might not resonate, because of the sort of grassroots activism piece of it, the idea of young people, a few young people being able to make great change. And also the bipartisan nature of it, I mean, it is kind of interesting that in this film you have kind of the Carter administration as the obstacle and
Yes.
Bush is signing the ADA. And so he, tried to get some material to Priya Swaminathan, who was running Higher Ground at that point, and then eventually to Tonya Davis, her partner. And they saw kind of an early clip reel, and they were really intrigued, and they came up and spent a lot of time with us in the edit room, and we watched a ton of footage, and we spent hours and hours kind of talking about, our vision for the project and where it could go. And she understood a lot of things really immediately that were really important to us, like that we were hoping the film would change culture, that it was a serious historical endeavor, and we needed a lot of time to do that right. And so she, left the edit room and called us from the parking lot and said, we want to get on board, and the president and Mrs. Obama feel the same way.
We're getting. I think it's a wrap in
you.
our language. Thank you so much. I couldn't thank you more.